Good morning. Black men excel, black men exceptional, black men extravagant, black men excellent, black men extraordinary. We can keep going on and on and on. All right, I'm excited to be here. My name is Adrion Porter, and I'm the founder of Mid-Career Mastery, and I am beyond thrilled to have this chat, this conversation about a very important topic, about going for the title, getting that raise, getting that promotion, getting to the next level. And I'm sure many of you would like to hear those insights. And so we're gonna start. I'm gonna have my fellow panelists introduce themselves, and we're gonna work our way back. But first, the way we're gonna do this, because I always like to have a little icebreaker when I do these things. Those who follow me know that I do this. First, state your name, your role, and if there was a song that would play every time you walk down the street or into a room that captures the essence of your brand and your personality, what would be your own personal theme song? All right? Name, role, personal theme song. Let's start at the end and work our way back.
All right, so I'm going first. Kenneth Poole, excited to be here. It's an honor to be amongst the panel and to speak to you guys today and to share with you all this week. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Clinician and Provider Experience for UnitedHealth Group. In terms of the question, all right, so for me, it depends on the situation and the audience, all right?
Yes.
So older audience and what kind of mood I'm in, kind of what's my vibe. Older audience, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Shining Star. Woo. All right?
All right. Love it.
Mid-range, Never Stop, Brand New Heavies.
Okay.
All right?
That's good.
When I'm really feeling like myself, The World Is Yours from Nas. Mm-hmm. All right, and it's my last one. I'm a music guy. on like presentation days, things, days you feeling aggressive, Go Crazy by Jeezy.
Wow. I see you already set the standard.
The wide range, bro.
Love it.
So,
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Robinson.
That was good, man. That was good.
Playlist.
All right, good morning. I'm Jeffrey Robinson. My current role is as the Provost and Executive Vice-Chancellor of Rutgers University in Newark. Yeah. I'm also the Prudential Chair in Business at Rutgers, and I've done a lot of things in that space. But to the question, I have two songs, not seven.
It was four. But
Yeah. In my jazz mode, it's going to be "A Love Supreme" by John Coltrane. Ooh. All right, nice and smoothed out.
I like it.
But on the days when I need to be amped up, I don't know how many of y'all are. I'm a Yankee fan, but there's a Mets man that comes out to this song. There's a picture that comes out to this song by Tommy Trumpet, and it's got all these trumpets too. I don't even know the name of the song. I just know that the song is amped up because every time this guy comes out to pitch, everybody is in the stands going dun 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 dun. I'm sorry, I got into it. So that's my song. That's my song. I'm stealing it from him.
Love it. All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am Rashad Burgess. I'm Vice President of Advancing Health and Black Equity for Gilead Sciences. I would say it is just incredible to be here.
Yes.
Incredible to be on this panel. It is also incredible to be being fed this week in a way that I've not been fed in a long time. But to the question about the song,
Yeah.
there are two songs, I'm liking this, two songs that come to mind. I don't give you my full playlist, but there's two songs. The first is Started From the Bottom by Drake.
That's right.
Because I really, when I look at my career and my life journey, I really, in many ways, started from the bottom. I was one of those kids that was never expected to be sitting in the seat that I sit in. And the second one is Beyonce's You Won't Break My Soul.
Yeah.
Because through all the adversity that all of us, and especially myself, I've had to navigate, I've never found that my soul was broken.
Love that answer. Good. Love these songs. All right, I got to change my Spotify playlist for this. I need to add some songs. Thank you, gentlemen. Let me just say also, it is, like these gentlemen and many of you in this room, it's a very honor to be here because we're going to have a very important conversation about career growth, being stuck, getting unstuck, and also I talk a lot about this in my job with Mid-Career Mastery and working with people in their 40s, 50s, and mid-career about connecting the dots in your profession. And we're going to chat more about that, how when you're trying to find yourself. And I just have to say, as far as me connecting the dots, everyone that knows me knows I have a huge reverence for Black enterprise. And ever since in my early 20s, I saw a cover story, January 1997, called From Buppy to BizWiz. And it was about Generation X. And it was written by Tariq Muhammad. And I saw that cover story, and it captured me because I was interested in generations, and there was a name to my generation at the time, back in 97. And that really led me to really just dive in and be a part of the BE story. And here we are later, and here I am working with primarily Gen Xers and mid-career professionals, and I have a podcast, Gen X Amplified. And so again, this is a very honor for me to be here, to be on the stage, and just see how the dots always connect. Remember that. So speaking of professional story, dots connecting, let's just talk about getting unstuck and this stage in your career. This is what we're all here to talk about. What's your initial thought about being a Black professional and advancing in your career, particularly, let's make this very timely and topical, in this post-pandemic world of work right now? Are you seeing a lot of individuals feeling stuck, feeling this ennui, especially as a Black professional? Let's just start macro. What's your initial thought about being stuck and not advancing, and what are you seeing in the workplace? We'll start, who wants to chime in first? We'll start with,
I can start.
all right, Dr. Robertson.
Now, they gave me this mic. I guess this other one might not be working. So you want me to use the hand mic? All right.
You said all right.
All right. So I do see some people stuck. I mean, some people were stuck before the pandemic. Let's be clear, all right?
Yes.
And then the pandemic came, and we were all shut down. We were in the mode where we were doing everything on Zoom, and the question was, okay, how do I do what I used to be doing in person, and I now got to do everything online?
Yes.
And what about networking? And what about mentoring? Mm-hmm. And those things don't seem to be happening the same way. So now we're quote unquote, post-pandemic. A lot of us are going back to work trying to navigate how much time we're going to be spending. But there's a fundamental question that people have to be able to answer for themselves. And to me, it's a question that I want us to address here on this panel. You can't just be about survival. We need to be about how we're going to thrive, not just survive. Thriving means you've tried to figure out, you have a better understanding of yourself and a better understanding of what you're good at, where your passions lie, where you can do things that benefit society, that also are supportive to your spirit and who you are. And in some ways, it's also figuring out how to harness your passion so that you are not being depleted every day going to work, but that you're actually being empowered. So that's a lot. And for many people who are stuck, their biggest challenge is trying to sort out where they want to be in these next 5 to 10 years, and whether where they are is that going to be that place, or whether they need to make some shifts and some shifts in their lives to accommodate some of these other aspects, so that they can have more thriving as opposed to just surviving.
Yeah, I like that. Thriving instead of surviving. Yes.
If I could jump in here,
Yes.
I think there are definitely individuals that feel stuck. Some, probably felt stuck more than just recently.
Yes.
I would say a couple of things come to mind. I think one, for many of us Black professionals in the workplace in corporate America, George Floyd has really changed and shifted the environment. And it's really, I would say it's had, in some ways, a two-pronged effect, if you will.
Right.
I think in certain ways, it's made it, opened up a lot of doors in terms of opportunities. And I think that there are many people in this room that can speak to that. I also would say it's been incredibly exhausting.
Okay.
And as I go around and I talk to colleagues, as I talk to peers, what you hear is this, opportunity, this, given opportunity to sit at certain tables that they weren't invited in before, but also having to navigate tokenism, having to navigate imposter syndrome, having to navigate these undue expectations to solve a problem that they didn't create.
Right.
As I've said to many of my colleagues are here, I've said to them, Black people were in corporate America before George Floyd. We just didn't show up.
Right.
And it's wonderful that there's a real intentionality to do work to develop us and to give us opportunity. But the other reality is that sometimes we're being asked to solve problems that we didn't create.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add in, and I've been wrestling with this for a while, this concept of passion. And I love when you said harnessing passion, right? So when you talk about being stuck, there's the external forces, which we all know about. Again, they're all just listed, racism and, biases and things to that extent. But then there's sometimes these internal things, right? Yes. And I think that a lot of times, this idea of doing something that we're passionate about can sometimes send us down rabbit holes or send us into tangents. And I think, and there's a little bit of semantics here, but I think being fulfilled when you talk about work may be equally, if not more important than passion. And again, it's something that I'm wrestling with myself because, again, I think that there are other things that we can do outside of our day jobs that can fulfill our passion, all right? And then that will allow us to do what we need to do in order to be fulfilled and be more effective in our workplace.
Yeah.
I know we want to move on, but I got to add something to this, what we just said there. Right. Because there are things that we can get paid for. There are things we're good at. There are things the world needs. There are things that, when you think about it, have more meaning, more fulfillment to us. The question is, can you find the overlaps of those things in careers that you may have and in other activities? My challenge to everybody here, and I know we got a few sisters out here too, I was about to say only the brothers, but to everybody, is how we distribute our energy is part of some of our challenge in life. When we don't find alignment in some of those things I just said, then we start spreading our energy out to all kinds of things. Right. And then you're not doing any one thing good, you're doing 4 things okay. And for some of us who found opportunities and jobs, careers, things that are part of our calling can meet what we're good at and can meet what the world needs, those kinds of situations allow us to really thrive. And to us to be excellent, I would argue we need to also find those places where those intersections are in our lives, because when we find that, then we truly can be excellent.
And to do that, you have to know your purpose.
And you got to know yourself.
You got to know your purpose. Yeah. Well, let's unpack that a little bit more. So we were talking about some of those external dynamics, and I want to get into a lot of the challenges, particularly for Black men in that middle management who want to ascend to the C-suite. But let's talk a little bit more about like passion, purpose, meaning, because a lot of what I'm passionate about and what I talk about and what we're talking about is this feeling when we're at this stage of our lives and careers where we feel this sense of being stuck. And I love looking at the psychology of it. So literally there is a natural phenomenon that happens when you are in your mid-career, midlife. It's called the U-curve of happiness. And I talk about this all the time, is that when you're in early adulthood, you have this self-reported level of work satisfaction that tends to be high, right, in your early 20s. But then as you age, it goes down into this U-shape. And then in your 40s and 50s, it nadires at its lowest point of self-reported work satisfaction happiness. Studies across numerous countries have validated this. But then as you get older, in your 60s, 70s, it goes back up. It follows this U-shape. And it's like a la the midlife crisis, the mid-career malaise. But I tell people all the time that Black people and Black men and Black women are underreported in a lot of that data. Because if it's a natural phenomenon, then we're not even addressing the microaggressions. We're not even addressing bias. We're not even addressing some of the prejudices. So I'm just curious, as we think about Black men in this state of their career, whether they're in their 40s or 50s or even earlier, but they're just trying to ascend, what are some of those specific challenges that are germane to Black men, you think, in the workplace when it comes to not being able to just progress, to get to that next level? Is it a matter of skills? Is it a matter of just having champions? Let's just talk about some of the strategies and the tactics, and first address some of the internal dynamics that you think why people, especially Black men, are in that state.
So I'll start and just say that I think Black men are some of the most brilliant and incredible beings on this planet.
Amen.
And I think I have found it never to be an issue of skills.
Got it.
I would say that one is an issue sometimes of visibility or the feeling of invisibility. And so you're in spaces where you're performing, you're executing, doing your job, going above and beyond,
right?
Yet you don't always feel heard and you don't always feel seen. And it's one time to have a single meeting and that's your experience. It's another thing to every single day that you show up. you feel invisible and you don't feel seen and heard. And it doesn't have to necessarily be true, because the inverse, the reality is that when you talk to others, you actually might be the person that they're looking at the most because of the fact that you're the only one. And when you're the only one, you're the one that sticks out, right?
Right.
But you feel incredibly invisible. I think secondly, I think one of the things that we're always having to fight against is the network. I oftentimes say that one's network is connected to one's net worth. And companies all across, the globe, when you have so few of us in C-suite, we oftentimes are not part of that network that's activating those promotions, that's activating the development.
Right.
And so you feel like you're sitting at the margins or on the outside. And so you're having to always push against that, or to find those ones that's willing to be a champion for yourself, as opposed to, in other cases, it naturally just happens at the bar because they got invited to go to the bar and have drinks. They got invited to vacation with the family.
Yes.
And so I'll start there. I think those are two: the idea of invisibility and the idea of having those that sponsor and not feeling connected to the C-suite.
The network, yeah. That's great.
The network.
This was made for me. It's like,
That's why you're here, brother.
I know. You wrote a book about it. Want to hear it? Here we go.
There you go.
Some of y'all know about In Living Color, but some of y'all too young for that. Here's the book.
I was going to say the name of the book. You have to put the book.
Black Faces in High Places.
High Places.
10 strategic actions for black professionals to reach the top and to stay there. And I'm going to say everything he said, and three things that we highlight in the book. Networks, but also networks that build power. It's not just about building networks strategically. It's also about leveraging that network. We build networks and then we don't use them. You got to build networks and then actually use them the effective way. And secondly, maximizing mentoring. Because part of it is not only having people in your life who are pouring into you, giving you some of that advice, whether they look like you or not. Old school thinking on mentoring is you got one person who's giving you all of this. New school thinking is you have a portfolio, right? A board of directors, multiple mentors who are pouring into you, giving you advice, giving you some of that support we're talking about. And then, we talk about lots of things in the book, but certainly how we leverage our might, which is actually a quote from the late, great Earl Graves, how we leverage our might within organizations, and events like we have right here today, and how you become, for those of you inside corporate America, an intrapreneur. I can say more about that, but leveraging what we do have to be excellent and using our connections to meet at least a double bottom line, where the company can do well and our community can do well. That's one of our competitive advantages. So it is about what you said. It is about understanding what we talked about in the last question, about who we are and where we're going, but then also connecting that to a strategy that helps you to network, have the right mentors, leverage our might. That's what allows you to be excellent.
The piece that I would like to add is, we talk about networks, and it's cliche and it's true, and everybody's heard it. It's about who you know. But I think another way of thinking about that, once you get to a certain level, it's about who knows you, right? Not necessarily of who you know, like who knows you. And I think, to get to your question, the problem is the diversity that exists within us, right? So you asked me for a walk-up question. I gave 4. These guys teased me, but they gave 2, right? and their answers were more broad than mine.
Right.
My whole point is, though, people try to box us in, right? And we're not boxed in people, right? Like, just by nature, as black men, right? We all have different sides to us, depending upon the day, depending upon the situation. And I think people try to box us in based on stereotypes, based on limited interactions, and that impedes us because we don't get to be known the way that others get to be known. And that enables them to move up and creates a barrier for us.
Well, I want to unpack that a little bit more, because you mentioned cliche network, but the power of your community, the power of your network, the power of your relationships can never, to me, be overstated or underestimated. And I want to get to some of those particular strategies because we're all right here sitting, looking all nice, smelling good, looking handsome, and we're at this event and we're networking with one another, right? But we're going to leave in a couple of days. We're going to go back to our respective organizations, our families, and we have to start the work. I want to get into the process of changing the narrative perception, who knows you, developing those relationships, because sometimes we talk about personal brand and some people think it's, am I a brand, am I not a brand? Perception is reality, and we all need to think about how people perceive us. As Jeff Bezos famously said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And to get even more into family, Carla Harris says from Morgan, all your career decisions will be made about you when you're not in the room, all right? You have to think about that. So all the major career decisions will be made about you when you're not in the room. So how do we start to craft the narrative that people will have in their hearts and minds about us as Black men in our respective organizations so we can start developing those relationships? So when they're making those decisions to assign that promotion, to make that assignment, to send that person to that particular project, that we're going to become top of mind. Let's talk about some of the strategies, how we can better network, just tactics, and develop that brand.
So I think there's a couple things there. I think number one, there's this idea of responsibility that we all have, right? When we're in a role, when we're at a company, academic institution, et cetera, that we have to represent. And we don't represent just for ourselves, but we represent for those that are coming behind us, right? And so I think that piece is important. I think the other part is being intentional with our networking and also, who we're looking at. So a lot of times, we tend to just, see someone who's successful, who has reached a certain level, if you will, that we'd like to reach, and think that necessarily applies to our situation.
Right.
And I think it's important to find people that have traveled the pathway that we're looking to travel, because somebody's done it before.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we're still in a world of first, usually there's somebody that's done something along those lines. And I think finding out what those people have done and finding their pathways is important.
I love that. Yeah, a lot of times we fall into that comparison trap, especially in this age of social media, right? When we have this in our hands, and I always like to say that comparison is the bane and kryptonite of progress. Both two superhero mentions as well. But seriously, because we can easily fall into that trap, and not everyone's path is the way that we should be going. And so let's talk, because I had a conversation yesterday at one of the dinners about networking, and a young gentleman who was talking about and asking advice on, all right, when we go to these type of events, based on our personality, how do we even begin to network? Like if I see someone that I admire, that I revere, that I find or I'm inspired by, how do I even start? Like how do I even approach that individual? Like any feedback on just getting to the tactics?
So let me give you a couple of things that I've seen work well.
Okay.
I think one, knowing your story and being able to have that elevator pitch about yourself is really, really critical. You have to tell people what they should think about you. Yes. Because if you don't tell people what they should think about you and you don't give them the language, they will come up with their own. And it may not be in alignment with how you see yourself. So, you really do have to tell people, this is what you should think about me.
Right.
Two is that you have to be courageous and not let fear and the tape that sometimes plays in our head overwhelm you and stop you from taking the steps and the opportunity. What do I mean? Is that you see the C-suite executive, at the bar talking to a group of folks, and you say, I really want to go introduce myself, but no, he's not going to want to talk to me. He doesn't see my value.
Right.
Oh, they said he's racist. I actually really push people. No, you have to overcome all that and walk up and say, hello, my name is Mike Thomas, and I'm such a pleasure to meet you. This is what I do in your organization. This is the impact that I have, and I would love to work on helping any problems that you may have, or as you come out and you're working in our area, I'd love to work with you. You would be surprised how many executives and C-suite executives are looking for people to do just that. The third thing that I found works is have an executive summary on yourself. A 3 to 5 slide deck that tells your story. And feel free to reach out to those executives and ask for an introductory call and be prepared to walk through to tell them your story. You might get on that call and you may never get through those 4 or 5 slides. But what happens is the intentionality of you taking time to develop the slides crystallizes your storytelling. And it becomes incredibly compelling because so many others don't do that work and don't take those steps.
Yeah, I love that. Storytelling, that is one of the underestimated tactics. Any other feedback on?
Oh, yes. Here's your
you ready?
Here's your 2-minute Professor Robinson moment.
Uh-oh,
Two types of networks.
We're in class, and we're in
Two types of networks
session.
that you need to think about. There's your aces. You get the people who you work with, your dense network, people who know each other and know you. They are going to help you and help you coordinate and get things done when the chips are down, late at night and all that kind of thing. It's great. Most people in their careers find those people and say, these are not only my work friends, they may also be my other friends too, outside of work. But there's another type of network, and it's the network that you could engage here or inside of your company. We call it a sparse network or an entrepreneurial network. And in that, beyond that network that is very close and cozy, these are the people you are reaching to. So part of what my brother to my right here just talked about is how do you reach out beyond that network that is the people that you know and everybody knows each other to a network that has some breadth across the organization, across your industry. 2 ways you can do that. First, in this room or in the confines of this Black Men Excel, you should be looking for people who are in either the industry that you're in or the industry you want to be in and network with them, meaning collect cards, contact information, link on LinkedIn. Spread out that network that way because that network has a very good implications for your career success. The studies also show us that within companies, those people who are moving up in organizations have these sparse networks that span across the organization, different departments, different places, some of you are in large companies where there are not only multiple divisions, but multiple sites. Knowing people across those sites who look like you and don't look like you. That kind of network benefits you better. I can say more, or you can read it in the book. But there are lots of benefits to doing that kind of network, and it goes based on your personality. It's not always about being the person who can come in the room and say, I can remember everybody's name. Yeah. Sometimes that's superficial.
Oh, yeah.
You can just collect a lot of cards that way. What's more important are often the more authentic one-on-one interactions, which you can establish, no matter whether you are that traditional extroverted person or more of an introvert. We could talk about that too, but that's a question somebody's going to ask, I hope.
Wow. Well, I was going to, do you have any? No. So they brought up 2 points that I think it warrants underscoring again. So there's knowing your story, right? Because story, and I think we don't do enough of that. I mean, many people are great at that, but we don't take the time and we don't be intentional with understanding our narrative. You have to tell your story. And everyone, no matter what level you are, no matter your station, you have a powerful story to tell. And it's one thing, and there's different models you can craft that story, right? What is your purpose statement? What is your story? A lot of individuals and companies that I revere use like a SOAR model, like whether it's the Executive Leadership Council or other organizations, where just establish your situation, what is the opportunity, what is the action, what is the result. It's very simple. It's a 4-step model, but they're called the SOAR storytelling model. Take some time when you leave here to craft your story. Think about how those dots connect throughout your professional career. Think about a situation or a time where you created impact, and start to work on that narrative. You may not have it solid overnight, but figure out that narrative. And then like Dr. Robinson said, you gotta take action. You gotta reach out. You gotta utilize LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most underestimated social platform, and I'm a huge fan. They're not paying me, I'm just saying it. But I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn because you can reach out to individuals. You can see who's connected to them, who's connected to them. And you're just 1 or 2 connections away. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the tactics and the nuances in this new post-George Floyd, post-COVID pandemic, social unrest, where DE&I is so top of mind right now. Many companies are doing it well. Some companies are just checking the box. and saying that they have D&I as a strategy, but what does that really mean? Can we just talk about how does that come down to our level as Black men and professionals, and how can we take advantage of some of those initiatives that are put in place, or how can we champion new initiatives to make sure that your DE&I and belonging initiatives are focused on your crew of Black men in your workforce? I'm just curious to hear some of those thoughts.
I'll start, but it'll be more of a tee up because I'd be interested to hear what these gentlemen have to say, because I think this is $1 million question. And billion dollar. And it's interesting because it started before George Floyd, right? It just got amplified. And what we're seeing in a lot of institutions, a lot of corporations, are these initiatives where when you go back and you look at the history of them, were created for us, but we don't seem to be benefiting from them, right? And that's where the frustration comes in for a lot of us, right? When we see there being initiatives or even rhetoric that leaders and companies and whatnot put out there, but we don't see or feel the benefits of them for ourselves or even for our colleagues that look like us.
Right.
I think that, and this is where again I'd like to hear some of the other perspectives. We have to try to hold our DE&I professionals within our organizations accountable. And that means figuring out a way to communicate with them effectively. And within the space of our companies, if you kind of think about it with a different lens, you're a consumer as well. And you need to let them know that your needs are not being met.
Right.
And here's some ways that you would like, obviously to have some sort of benefit. And again, that's situation dependent. How do you do that? How are you communicating that? Like I said, that if we could solve that, I think we'd all go back on cloud 9. But there is some frustration there because we're not seeing us reap the benefit of these D&I initiatives, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, that's a great point. Any other?
So the piece I would add is that we often, when we have these conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, are focused on what I'll call the workforce and the workplace part of the equation. Thinking that if we can have better pipelines and get people in the door, then how do we keep people in sort of the retention aspect, and then again movement through the organization. And again, it goes back to what we just heard. You can get frustrated because the systems may not be changing as fast as we want to. There's some change, there's some efforts, but holding people accountable, I think, is important. But I don't want us to forget about two other areas where we also need to push the agenda. One I would call market-based or market-related, meaning what is this company, in the corporate context, what is this company doing to address our consumers outside of the company, not just internal, but outside? How are we engaging in supplier diversity? How are we creating better links between what we do in this company and the communities that we care about? And then there's another aspect, which is, of course, is community. And a lot of intersections. Where are these companies putting up their headquarters? What real estate transactions are they involved in? How are they addressing their philanthropic giving within this context? It's nice to say, okay, we're going to do this inside the company, but what about the educational programs or the mentor programs outside of the company, or for that matter, the scholarships that you're going to be giving to young people? So those kinds of things, and I have a very close relationship right now with Fiserv, and we've been pushing them on all of those points, and finally have a partnership that I think really, really works. So let's not just think about DEI as what happens inside the company. And all important, everything we just heard, plus the accountability, but let's also push the agenda outside and the connections, intersections between the corporate and the community.
I would just
Thanks, Todd.
I would just ditto everything the great professor, my colleague over there said. I think I would underscore the critical importance of partnership. When you're sitting in roles as chief diversity officers or responsible for the diversity and inclusion and equity efforts, you are oftentimes every day having to just fight.
Yes,
and I think having people who are within the company and even outside of the company that you can partner on that's willing to bring solutions and to raise their hand to help you execute is so critical. Because oftentimes what you're asked to do and what you're resourced to do, there's a significant delta.
Yeah. Right.
And so what you need is you need people who are willing to actually be on the ground and help you do the work.
Yeah, I love the fact you said that those two keywords, execute and partnership. I tell people a lot of times your professional growth and progress, you need to have some pep in your step. And I have an acronym called preparation, execution, and partnership.
Yeah.
And it's a little pep talk. But it's true, like in order to make that shift, first you have to prepare, because we don't do enough of that, but we should do more. And you just have to execute, you have to do the work. But don't forget about the power of community and power of partnership. That's right. And just to get some pep in your step to move from point A to point B. So, Dr. Robinson, you mentioned earlier about having this entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
And we're talking about going for the title, going for the promotion, going for the raise, which we all should do. And we've gotten some great insights and gems on some of those tactics, right? Networking, utilizing your resources. But what about for some of those professionals in the room who have aspirations to move up, maybe just not internally, but externally? Maybe have aspirations to start their own thing while they're still at their job, because they still want to progress, but they have all of these goals and they have a passion to create something, to solve a problem with their solution. I'm just curious to hear any thoughts on, number one, utilizing the entrepreneurial passion and motivation, but also some of the strategies of maybe creating something from nothing.
Yeah, it's something near and dear to my heart. I think the broader point is that as you move up, people are not going to recognize you just for doing the job well. It's for the innovation. It's the new things that you bring, the new connections and partnerships that you bring. And so whether you're doing that inside of a company or whether you're doing it outside, it's the same set of skills.
Right.
So, sometimes we get a little competition between the corporate folks and the entrepreneurial folks. And in a group like this, I'm sure I got both people who are straddling that or people who are on either side of that. The skills are the same. What are you bringing that's creative and innovative, applying it to a business context or community context? And those set of skills can be applied in either one, entrepreneurship inside a company or entrepreneurship outside of a company, making your own thing. To create something from nothing requires that you know something, and for some of us who have done the corporate thing, we automatically assume we can roll right into entrepreneurship. And that is probably a mistake.
Yeah, it is.
Doesn't mean you don't have something to bring to the table. It just means that it's a new way of doing it. So go to the training program. Go to do the online class. Take up something that's just going to give you a little bit of edge on the entrepreneurial side to add to the things that you learned before. I've seen people make that mistake. But I'll say one last thing. If it is time for you to leave your corporate job to start up the entrepreneurial thing, get the package. You know why I say get the package? Because you're going to need that money.
Yeah, gotta make that investment. That's right.
Because I counsel and work with a lot of people who have done the corporate side and have decided they're making a change, sometimes to service the company that they used to work at, which is a really good situation. But sometimes people are looking for those grants, and they're saying, where's the grant? Well, the grant might be the package you just got from XYZ company. To use that as the seed money for your entrepreneurial endeavors. Take everything you learned in the corporation, add to it some entrepreneurial training, and then you will have some more success.
Yeah, and we're going to, actually I'm going to say this too, we're going to take questions. So if you have a question, like in a minute or so, you can start probably making your way to the microphone. We're going to start Q&A. But before we do that, let's, I love what you said about get the package and what you said about resources. Because again, not everyone may not want to start a business, but no matter whether or not you are a professional or an aspiring entrepreneur, it's always great to utilize an upskill, right? Learn new skills, courses. I say that and I want to reinforce that because even if you are trying to get to that next level, and for individuals who may not want to aspire to be VP or C-suite, but they just want to be recognized, they want to be noticed, they want to be amplified, start to look at some of those skill gaps. And there's so many resources and tools that are out there that I strongly feel are underutilized. We talked about LinkedIn, right? They have LinkedIn Learning. courses galore on skill development, communication, relationship building. So I wanted to double down on what Dr. Robinson said about if you're an entrepreneur, look at resources, look at platforms, but also if you're just looking to professionally progress, take advantage of those resources. And also relationships. They talked about relationships earlier, because if you're trying to go out on your own, get the package, but if you didn't establish great relationships while you were at the job and you try to go back to get them as a client, you're out. Or if you establish great relationships, then that may be your first client, the company that you worked for, because you have developed and nurtured and cultivated a strong relationship, and they know you, they know the value that you can provide, and then when you're trying to make it on your own, then it's easier path. So we're going to open up for questions also. Anyone has a question for any of these gentlemen?
All right.
How you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. All right.
My name's Alex. I'm from John Hancock. I'm an investment analyst. Say you leverage your network, and you've had a mentor, and you gave you the ability to get the promotion that we're all seeking, and now you're like in this new role in this new department, and you're surrounded by new people that probably have a misconception of how you've gotten the job, since the DEI is so front and center right now, and trying to make the work environment more diverse. Can you just give a little bit of color on how to navigate the new job, right? How to navigate your new colleagues once you actually get the promotion that we're all seeking?
It's a great question.
I'll jump in first. So my thought is one-on-ones. I'm a huge one-on-one person, right? And so, and you know, we've had this discussion around telling your own story.
Yeah.
Because people, if you don't do it, people will do that for you. And then also, again, this perception, which you brought up, right? This person is in this role because of this, whether that's true or not. And so my thought is, anytime I'm in a new space, I want to meet one-on-one with folks. And I don't want to meet one-on-two, one-on-three, one-on-four. I want to meet one-on-one. And I'll meet one-on-one with everybody and really break down those barriers. And then that's when you have that elevator speech of who you are, what you stand for, what I'm here to do, how I can help and service you, how we can work together in a partnership or a collaborative model, and then go from there. So that would be my piece. I don't know if you guys have something to give.
I would underscore definitely the one-on-ones. I think that helps to build those relationships. And I would say over-communicate. When you're a new leader, people need to hear from you and hear from you as frequently as possible. I also would say is figure out what those quick wins are going to be and make sure you amplify those quick wins and focus on performance and turn down the impact of those naysayers or the ones that said you were the diversity hire, because it actually doesn't matter. You got the job. And so your job is now to perform in the job. And I get it. I've actually had an experience of that, irrespective of all the impact I've had, performance I've had that experience. And what happens when you don't turn that down is it can become consuming. In every meeting you're in, you're thinking about what that one person said, or maybe those two people said, or what things you can't control. But what you can do is control yourself. So those one-on-one meetings, I think, are really critical. It helps build relationship, create strong vision, strong direction, over-communicate, identify those quick wins, and perform. Execute with excellence.
First 90 days. First 90 days, do that.
Yeah.
And be strategic about your networks.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Next question.
I think it's officially good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. My name is Tremaine Smith. I'm the Vice President and Operations Manager for the Global Office of DEI at JPMorgan Chase. And my question is around failure. We talk a lot about climbing the ladder and the upward trajectory, which is great. What happens when you misstep or you fall down the ladder, you don't get to the next rung as you're supposed to? What are some strategies around getting through that ego bruising experience in getting back up and continuing to climb.
So I say first, don't dwell on the failure. Learn from the failure.
Yes.
And get up fast. And I think that is so critical to people who actually excel and perform. That everyone is going to have failure. I don't know anyone that is successful that hasn't had also a line of failures that are intertwined with their success.
Yes.
So I would say you reflect on that failure, learn from the failure, get up fast, and keep moving forward. And I would say also amplify the success. The failure was the learning opportunity for you. What matters is that next success that you're gonna have, and keep the light shined on that. So yeah.
Thank you.
And I would add that your mentors and sponsors are going to be critical at that moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't want to make assumptions. You need to have those people who are in your corner, who are 1, 2 levels above you in the organization, who can be in the room when they start talking about this stuff and shut that conversation down. Because if they don't shut that conversation down, then that's when it starts to follow you through the organization. That's right. Because I'll tell you what, there's some other folks who had some problems, but we're not talking about that, are we? Because somebody who was in the room when they were talking about promotions and development was able to say, yeah, he made a mistake, yeah, she made a mistake, but I'm sure that they learned from it and that we can move on.
Right.
You want that to happen.
That's right.
And so that's why you have to establish those mentor relationships, those sponsor conversations and sponsor relationships before we get to that situation, and they can also walk you through what things to do.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm glad you said that, because we don't talk enough about failure. Like, it's all about having that growth mindset, because mindset, which is really the foundation to professional growth. You will fail. You like to say, I eat failure for breakfast, right? Because if you don't fail, you don't succeed. Like, what is failure, really? And if you think about also those mentors, which you said are so important, most of those mentors and sponsors have failed as well. Absolutely. So if you have not nurtured those type of relationships, when failure happens, lean on your circle of influence, lean on your mentors, lean on whoever it is in that relationship circle to reinforce the greatness that you have within you, and to say, okay, let's look at a plan B. Let's look at a plan B next steps. Let's look at some of those headwinds that came upon you, and let's look how we can avoid them next time. Failure will happen, but just eat them for breakfast and succeed.
Got my spoon ready. Thanks.
Spoon is ready, and the plate.
I'm in.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for all the nuggets. I'm feverishly taking all of my notes here. My name is Deshaun Mars, Vice President of Global Philanthropy at JPMorgan Chase. So I have a question about career pivots. So I recently made a career pivot from the public sector, government, to the private sector.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about making, shifts in our careers and advancing. But as we're advancing now and we're thinking about a career pivot into a new field, a new subject area, a new function, do you have any concrete thoughts, concrete actions that we can start taking if we want to make that shift and still progress?
I have a passionate focus on this. It's all about those transferable skills. People are pivoting all the time, especially now in this great resignation, great reshuffle, great reflection, whatever you want to call it. People are starting to reevaluate their lives, and so they're making that pivot. My first advice would be take a self-inventory and look at all the skills that you've attained and what transfer over to this new industry, this new vertical that you're applying, and make sure you amplify those transferable skills. And start immediately with navigating and nurturing those relationships. You see the common theme, right? Because navigating those relationships are with individuals that have been in that field for a certain amount of time that you can learn from. But I would say just start looking at those transferable skills that you can apply over, because you have those, and it's all about not thinking just those technical hard skills that are just applicable to that position. Look at those transferable skills, and then start fast nurturing those relationships.
I like that, and I would add, like, usually the pivot comes because you've done something right where you were before, right? And so I just had a big career pivot in terms of industry. So before I was at UnitedHealth Group, I was at the Mayo Clinic. So I was at the Mayo Clinic up until last year, and so moved from a care delivery space to a company that's more of a insurer, and also more of a broad, comprehensive, purely corporate environment. But I think it's important to recognize that there were things that you did exceptionally well that got you the opportunity to do that pivot. And a lot of times we look at, okay, I'm in this new environment. What are the new skills? Who are the new people? What do I need to pick up? And all that's important.
Yeah.
But I think still anchoring in what you did right before, because what took you to that point where you could move over is those are the same things that are going to make you go far in the new space as well.
Yeah, it's great. Great point.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Now, thank you for the question. Next.
Good afternoon. Carl Sims. I'm a director and New Ways of Working coach at Equitable. And my question comes from pretty much from my household.
Okay.
Through the years, I've been married almost 29 years.
Congratulations.
And I'm getting better at listening to my wife. Thank you.
That's the key.
Smart man, smart man.
Is this a year 28 or no, I'm just kidding. Just messing with you.
I lose track. One of the things that my wife has revealed to me, and it's more evident, I took on a new role last year, becoming a coach and everything. So one of the things that my wife has relayed to me is that she's an introvert. My daughters are introverts.
Okay.
Many of the people that are co-coaches with me are introverts. Oftentimes they are asked to change who they are and to be more like someone else. But it's, that's not what an introvert does. So what advice would you give to an introvert in terms of seeking a promotion, in terms of because they're doing the work, they're doing a great job, but how do they get that promotion? So what words would you?
Great question.
Yeah. Let me speak to that because people sometimes have a misconception about what introversion and extroversion actually mean, and it's specifically it's about how we engage the world. You can tell yourself that you're an extrovert if you come into a room like this and you get energized because there's so many people here. If you would probably be more on the introversion side of the scale if you come into a room like this and this starts to drain you a little bit. It takes a lot more effort for you to get up for this kind of thing. And that speaks to two different things, to two different ways that people will do networking, for example. And if we say that networking is important to career development, then let's understand that introverts will network differently than extroverts. Introverts are going to look for more one-on-one interactions, be more authentic, will often not want to engage, 25 people at the same time, but having a small group or one-on-one conversation is better. So, your strategy has to take into account that that's your approach, that maybe you need to have some other folks, when you go into a room, be more strategic about, I want to meet these 5 people in the room. And find those 5 people, either get introduced to them or have other people introduce you to them, or in some cases, you're going to figure out ways to engage them even after that whole big meeting. Extroverts walk into a room, they say, well, I want to meet everybody. And that's sort of the classical way we say people should be. And what you lose on that side is the authenticity, is the intentionality.
Right.
And so my point to introverts often is that you have to network differently if you're going to be doing things. It's not better. It's different. The other way is not better. It's different. You got to do you. And so that's part of it. And I'm sure there are other dimensions of it, but there's a great book about the power of quiet that talks about what introverts have and what they bring to the table and why that thoughtfulness is so important to companies, and that companies should not be pushing those people out. They need to be drawing those folks in. So take a look at some of those things. That will be really helpful to the folks on introverts.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that too, and I love your point because like introversion, extroversion, and being an ambivert, sometimes you can be a hybrid of both, is really about, again, how you get your power and how you thrive in that power, external power. And I tell also introverts this lesson as well, is that look at ways how you create value and create impact. Because there are a lot of introverts that don't create, their value creation and their impact giving isn't necessarily being overt, being the talk of the town. They can be heads down and create impact, whether it's nurturing relationships or cultivating meetings, or whether it's adding value to someone who talks about you when you're not in the room. Get that person who's an introvert to, again, do a self-reflection of ways that they get energized of adding value that may not be so externally visible, and make sure they remind themselves of those ways. Also do a self-reflection and remember those magical moments where people said things about them, that how they added value, and start to focus on those things. Right? Again, you could be heads down, you could be by yourself, but maybe you sent a really nice email, you created a meeting, or cultivated some sort of project. And that's how they create an impact. And tell them, he or she, to triple down on that. And they will be amplified and they will be noticed.
Wonderful. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Next question.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Really appreciated all of the wisdom that you've dispensed so far and given us an idea of what your journeys were. My name is Hakeem. I work in strategy and transformation at John Hancock. And my question is, although all of us here are looking for the next step up, the reality is that we're not going to necessarily find it in the firms that we currently are in. So what criteria do you gentlemen use to determine that it is time to take your talents elsewhere?
Just came with it. You just came with it. I love it. No, I like it.
These people like that.
Let me, I think.
Everybody wants to jump in. Let's go one by one. Kenneth.
I'll keep my brief things and let everybody go. But I mean, I think the fact that you posed that question is an important one, right? Because there's so many people that feel like they can't go. And so knowing that you can and you will, should circumstances dictate such, I think is the first big part. For me, I think it comes down to how many times you hit your head against the wall. So again, like I said, I left the Mayo Clinic and went to UnitedHealth Group because I hit my head against the wall 3 times. And I gave it 3 times. The first time, I didn't get the role that I wanted. All right, I'll let that go. The second time, I didn't get the role that I wanted. I let that go. The third time, okay, it's time to pack up and go. And that second time, I had already started getting ready. For me, though, to get at the exact point of your question, it was when the reasons for not getting the role were inconsistent. Because now you're changing the goalposts on me. Because I can live with you saying, okay, you need X, Y, Z skills. Great, I'll go back and get that. But when I go back and get X, Y, Z skills and you tell me, oh, we actually want A, B, C skills, okay, now your language is changing. I can't trust you. This is a transactional relationship. Let me go get better somewhere else. And so that was the line that I draw.
Yeah, it's great.
I actually think it's, for me, my experience has been when I was at Centers for Disease Control. I was there for 12 years. I was one of the youngest branch chiefs in the history of CDC at 31.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was having an incredible career journey. And I had that moment in my gut where I was like, it is time for me to go. I don't feel like my voice is being heard. I don't feel like I'm having the kind of impact I am supposed to have. And when I show up here, I'm not getting the kind of energy I used to get. And so I said, I can stay and I can functionally die, or I can take the risk and I can live. And so for me, it was really a choice of functionally dying. I mean, I'd be physically living, but functionally being dead man walking. Or I could live and do my purpose, operate my purpose, do the things I'm supposed to do, be where I'm supposed to be, have my voice heard, my ideas appreciated. And for me, it's also creating opportunity for others. That's another mark. We talked a lot about mentors for ourselves and sponsors. But to me, the other piece of this that's really important is who are you pulling with you and who are you pulling behind you? And I think for me, none of those things were happening where I was at, even though the perception would have said otherwise. That's why you gotta know yourself. You gotta really know yourself. Because if I was listening to everyone else, I would have stayed where I was at. Because I had, this really big job, big corner office, I had the whole thing. And I left to join another company as an individual contributor. Did this. Because I knew that the vision I had for my life, ultimately, I'd get the job. I'd get promoted. I knew that would happen because if I'm living out my purpose, I'm excelling. So.
Yeah, I was going to say too, if you start to feel a level of deflation that's unbearable, if your values are being sacrificed, if you don't recognize yourself anymore, if the people that you love and care about that's in your community and circle of influence don't recognize you, it's time to be out.
It is.
When you start to lose yourself, when your values become sacrificed, and we need to talk more about values, establishing those values. When you don't recognize yourself, you don't have to be elated, but when you're deflated, then you're losing yourself. It's time to go. This is not for you. To me, that mental health, that internal, that personal feeling, when it becomes sacrifice, it was probably past time for you to go, but you definitely need to run fast and out the door.
Yeah.
So that's my.
Starts
that's my-
inside out. You gotta do the inside work first, because if you don't do that, let me say it this way, you'll make better decisions if you know you better.
Exactly.
Right? Understand where you are, how intentional you are, what things you need to work on, things that you want to develop. And once you know those things about yourself, you will be able to make a better decision about where you should be going next. So we wish you well, brother.
Appreciate the food for thought. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think we have time for one more question, maybe?
As we,
yes.
no, it's great. But before we jump into that last question, the one thing that I will add to is like everybody, particularly once you get into that point, know your number. All right, so
Know your number, you said?
Know your number,
Got
meaning
it.
like, what is it going to take? For what threshold do you need to go?
Absolutely.
Because what you don't want to do is leave a situation that's all right and go to a situation that's worse. So what's your number? And the number's not just financial, right? It's not only the finances and the benefits, but it's the role, it's the growth, it's the potential, it's the fulfillment, it's the passion. What is your literal and figurative number that says, okay, when this comes, I'm out. And when another opportunity comes and it's below that, no thanks, I'm gonna stay where I'm at.
I'm so glad you brought it back to the economic piece of the puzzle, because we are at Black Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Right? You can't forget about the money. And also the other bills. Thank you. Last question, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Garnet Miller. I'm with Prudential, financial project manager. So my question, I thought about it like 3 or 4 times while I was sitting back here, around diversity and inclusion. A lot of corporations and companies use the term, and there's a lot of, I would say, gray area when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I mean, a lot of companies are now jumping on board with diversity and inclusion. And when you think of diversity and inclusion, those who don't understand it will think they're opted out of it. So what is your message to the corporations to ensure that everyone feels included in, you know, and not so much muddy the water?
What's the?
But the message to the company, and it's a company I know very well,
No, not my.
or any company for that matter.
You saw he was very careful.
I mean, you're talking. It's some real talk, because there's some folks who don't look like us who could be very taken aback by all of this DEI talk. Does that include me? And the reality is, there's a role for everybody else too. We mentioned networking, we mentioned mentorship, we mentioned sponsorship, but there's a thing called allyship, right? So part of the answer is, if you want a role, one of the roles is to be my ally, our ally in helping some of these things to transpire. The company needs to recognize that there are some folks who are not as excited about DEI as the rest of us, but they need to send another message to them. If this company is going to survive, we need to include the talents of everybody. When we exclude other folks, when we exclude people of color and women to come to the table, then our company's not going to be as good. So when that message gets out there to corporations, then you start to realize, okay, well, that's the story we got to take. Doesn't mean there are not going to be some hardheads out there who don't want to buy that, but that's the message that seems to be working. And then some will go the extra effort and do the allyship. That becomes a better place to be than it's just all about black and brown people.
Yeah, when you align that allyship and make sure you amplify the dollars that are associated with a strong DEI, because as studies have shown, when you have a diverse organization, no matter it's race, gender, age, you talk about age a lot too, that's where the money comes in. And so I like to say ROI means return on inclusion, all right? So make sure you continue to amplify that, and they'll get on board. All right, thank you.
All right.
I think that's it. First, let me just say thank you, Dr. Poole, Dr. Robinson, Rashad, for this great conversation. I want all of you, I'm sure all the gems you've heard in this session, we implore you to go out, keep going for the title, keep going for the next, no matter what it is. Utilize your resources, utilize your network, upskill, take advantage of this conference. So, you know, a true testament to a great conference is not what we do here, is what we do once we leave. So remember that. So when we leave this session, this is not about us. We were great and honored to have this conversation with you. This is about you and what you're going to do and what the lessons that you have learned and the gems that you have gotten today and you will continue to get for the rest of the session. What are you going to do moving forward to get to the next level? All right? Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.